Good evening. I'm County Supervisor John Joya, and I want to welcome you to another in our series of redistricting workshops. We are basically holding a number of these around Contra Costa County in order to hear from the public about our proposed redistricting scenarios and alternatives. Really, the purpose of this evening is for you to hear a presentation from David Twa, who you'll hear from shortly, about our redistricting process, what we've been doing. And I'm so glad, I'm told there's about 17 people so far on CCTV watching, so we know that there's at least that many that care, and I know there are more. And we want to hear from you on your thoughts. We've tried to make this process easier and more user-friendly this year by creating a website that allows you to draw your own maps, your own communities of interest, and to submit them to the county. And I will be here. As soon as I finish my comments, I will be sitting up there on the dais. We are here at San Pablo City Hall in their council chambers. In fact, I'm told that this is the first public meeting being held in the council chambers. So we invite anyone to come in person or to participate remotely. We think these dual hybrid participation meetings are important to respond to community desire and make them available in person, but also make them available remotely for you to do it from wherever you're at. So with that, I will turn it over to David Twa, who's our former county administrator, who's actually overseeing our redistricting process. And again, I will be here to listen, and I may make some comments at the end. And so thank you for participating and zooming into this.
Thank you, Supervisor Joya, and welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. Basically, we're going to cover three things. I'm going to do kind of an introduction to talk a little bit about redistricting, what it is and why we do it, and what the parameters are. Then I'll turn it over to Christine Solstang from our Department of Conservation and Development Mapping Division, who will walk you through the process for anybody who would like to know how to draft a map, either of a community of interest or of a supervisorial district. And when she is done with that, she will turn it over to Chris Howard, who is also with the Department of Conservation and Development, and he will present 5 concept maps that we have prepared based upon the public hearings that we've had with the board, as well as all of the workshops and inputs from each and every person. We have a dedicated website for redistricting. It will contain all of the information that we have, every map that is drawn by the public, every map that is presented in front of the board for their consideration, and every public comment. So we'll walk you through that process this evening and explain it all to you, and so that hopefully if you would like to draw a map, or if you even just want to make a comment, you'll have the opportunity to do that, and as well as make sure that we share that with the Board of Supervisors. The other thing to be aware of is that everything that we produce that'll be on the dedicated redistricting website will be there for 10 years. So it includes videos from these public workshops. It includes obviously all of the public hearings that the board has had, as well as a number of workshops that we did in September and October for the public to learn how to draft the maps. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So redistricting is necessary, obviously, to comply with the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which says that one person, one vote. The last time we redistricted was 10 years ago, because it is done the year after the census is taken. So in this case, of course, the census was taken in 2020, and typically in a given census period, the information from the census is released around the first day of April of each year. This year, of course, because of a number of factors, not the least of which everything that was going on in Washington, D.C., but also because of COVID-19, the data was not released until September 20th of this year, which has made our redistricting process shortened because there is some statutory timelines. For example, we must be done with redistricting by law by December 15th of this year. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. In most counties in California, it is the Board of Supervisors that's responsible for drawing the supervisorial districts. And this has to be done using what's called the California Official Redistricting Database. And that was released, as I said, on September 20th. One of the reasons that by law we have to wait for the California official data is that California takes incarcerated population, any individual who is actually incarcerated in a state institution, so not county jails, but in the state institutions. Those numbers are allocated back to the community from which they were in before they became incarcerated. So in our case, there was a little over 2,000 individuals who were incarcerated that their number had to be allocated back to the individual supervisorial districts. Not a large number, but again, by law, we had to wait until we had that information before we could proceed to do any drafting of maps. So this is the map that currently exists in Contra Costa County. This was based, again, as I said, on the 2010 census. And so this is 2011 was the last time we did the redistricting. And as you can see, we've color-coded it. So for example, Supervisor Joya's district is district number 1. It appears in blue on this one. There is a lot of data that is contained in our maps that we draw for presentation. As you can see from this, down in the left-hand corner, there is what's called total variance, and it says 7.91%. The goal, obviously, is to create districts that are substantially equal in population. But the law also recognizes that there are many reasons why some deviations in population will occur. Things like communities of interest, which may not fit exactly in a particular city or line. The fact that in our county, we have a very large mountain that sits in the middle of the county. And so the districts have to be organized around that. So you're allowed a deviation up to 10%. From the mean. The mean is if you took all the population of Contra Costa County and divided it by 5, it would come out to be a little over 233,000 people per district. So that's the mean, the number that would be ideal if you could do it. But again, as I said, the law allows this 10% deviation. You can have 5% above the mean or 5% below the mean, but that total cannot be more than 10%. So in this particular case, you may have trouble again because of the size of this map, but as you can see, in this case, District 2, the one kind of in the purple, essentially was 4.35% above the mean, and District 1, which is Supervisor Joya's district, was 3.56% below the mean. So you total those two numbers up, and that's how you arrive at the 7.91% population deviation currently exists in the county. This map also includes a lot of information about the demographic analysis of race and ethnics population by district, by total population, and then also by citizen voting age population. Those numbers are required by law in order to meet the Federal Voting Rights Act, as well as California's Fair Maps Act, as we call it. So the goal as we draw any map is to look at the demographics to make sure that we are not violating anybody's rights and that we're making sure that any consideration of race and ethnicity will not discriminate against any particular group or any particular person. One of the things that we have tried to do throughout this process is to do a robust public outreach. So we've done a number of major things, but one of them, as I indicated, is the fact that we are maintaining this dedicated redistricting website. And so if you go to our website, one of the things you could do first is simply become a subscriber. And that is if you provided us with your email, then as we developed information on the redistricting, anything that we have, any notices as far as public hearings, anything, data that comes in, if somebody has drafted a map, for example, a member of the public has drawn a map, either of a community of interest or of a supervisory district, all of that would be there and you would be notified of that and you would see it available. So our dedicated redistricting website has had over 5,500 reviews, and we've also pushed materials out on Twitter and next door posts, and we've had 121,000 plus of those. Each time we have a public hearing, we do a board order, and there are attachments to that board order that can provide a number of reports. In this case, attachment B to the October 19th public hearing board order basically had a much more complete redistricting communications report. As the supervisor indicated, essentially we are doing a number of public hearings in order to get the word out as well as meet the requirements of California for the redistricting process. So on August 10th of this year, we had our first redistricting public hearing. And obviously that was before the September 20th date when the California population numbers were released. But the reason we did that back on August 10th was as of August 1st, we had obviously set up our dedicated redistricting website. And so we wanted to publicize that. We wanted to actually explain how people could go to that site and make use of it so that they could actually start working on any concepts that they believed important. And again, they could keep up on all of the information that we provide. After the September 20th release of the census data, we had a public hearing on October 5th. And then we had one last week on October 19th. One of the things that the Fair Maps Act of California requires is that one of the public hearings had to be either on the weekend or in the evenings. So the one on October 19th was held at 6:15 p.m. In the evening to not only to provide a better opportunity for people to participate, but also to meet the requirements of the state law. So then starting last Saturday, October 23rd, we started a series of workshops, one each day, again, with the idea in mind to provide more opportunities for people to participate in the redistricting process and also to do them at different times in different days so that people who may not be available to come to our public hearings during the regular board meetings or because they work, whatever their schedule might be. So on the 23rd, we had one that was on Saturday morning. On Sunday, we had one that started at noon. And then Monday, we had one in the evening as well as Tuesday in the evening. And here we are now on Wednesday evening. We will have a sixth one tomorrow night. Again, that one will start at 7 p.m. And of course, as I said, the goal is to get people's involvement in this. One of the problems, of course, is the fact, as I indicated, that because of the late release of the census data, the law still requires that we have to be done with our redistricting by December 15th. And so we have a public hearing coming up on November 9th. That'll be at 9 a.m. in the county boardroom. And another one on November 23rd, which again will be in the county boardroom. All of that is necessary in order to meet the timelines and complete the redistricting by December 15th. The law is very specific in terms of requiring timelines in terms of posting final maps before you adopt the redistricting. And so that's why we can't wait until December 15th to actually hold the last hearing. And the reason why we need to hold it on November 23rd. As I indicated, and here's just a little more information in terms of the redistricting supervisory workshops that we did. As I also mentioned, California law has some mandatory requirements, not the least of which, of course, is that we must be done by December 15th. It also required that we hold a minimum of 4 hearings. You will note from our schedule that I showed, we'll actually be holding 5 public hearings. And in addition to that, we'll be holding the 6 community workshops that I talked about and that you saw. Also, the California Fair Maps Act requires certain priorities. It's not simply that, gee, well, we can do whatever we want. We actually have to follow these priorities. And the first one, and note that they're ranked. So the very first one, the top ranking, is that to the extent practicable, supervisory districts have to be geographically contiguous. All of the maps that we have prepared, all of the maps that have been submitted by the public so far meet that criteria, so we're fine. The second one is the one that most people tend to focus on. This is the one that essentially talks about communities of interest. And essentially, the goal of this, of course, is for that communities of interest should be held together and preferably in a single supervisorial district. After that one, the next one is to the extent practical, the geographic integrity of a city should be minimized so that in terms of any division of a city is minimized. In Contra Costa County, because we have several large cities, we have cities that have been divided in terms of being represented by more than one supervisor. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into showing some of the maps. So what is a community of interest? This is specifically defined by the statute. A community of interest is a population that shares a common social and economic interest. And for that reason, it should be included within a single supervisory district for the purpose of, as it says, effective and fair representation. Now, having said that, the statute also says a community of interest can be almost anything, but it has to be identifiable by a specific geographic area. So here are some examples of communities of interest. Urban or rural interests. You probably are aware of the fact that we have, as I said, some large cities, but we also have large unincorporated areas in Contra Costa County. It could be housing patterns or living conditions, social interests, cultural or religious or language. School districts is a common one, and you'll see as we go through the maps this evening that many of the lines are drawn based upon either school districts or school attendance areas. And then, of course, as mentioned, city boundaries, and then policy issues. If you're concerned about crime or education, perhaps employment or economic patterns, all of those can be considered as communities of interest. We have a much more inclusive list of ideas in terms of what are communities of interest on our dedicated redistricting website. So if you go to that site, we'll give you plenty of additional ideas in terms of things that may constitute communities of interest. As I indicated, one of the other things that we did besides the public hearings, besides all of these workshops that we're doing, we also did 3 community online workshops. These were technical workshops that were intended to help the public learn how to use the online mapping application and how to submit suggestions of communities of interest or suggestions for supervisorial district maps. The first one was held in September, and then we held 2 in October, and one of the 2 that we held in October was conducted in Spanish. So having said all of that, one of the things that we wanted to do this evening was talk about how you could draw your own community of interest or supervisor district maps if you so wish. We have 2 members from our Department of Conservation Mapping Division, Christine Solsting and Chris Howard, both of whom are well experienced, and I have to compliment them as well as the department in terms of the training that they've done, the work that they have done to develop this, as well as to help people draw community of interest or supervisor maps, as well as the concept maps that we'll be talking about in a little bit. So Christine will now walk you through the process on how to draft maps, and then she will introduce Chris Howard, who will describe the proposed concept maps that we have. So welcome, Christine.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here. Thank you, Supervisor Joya, for hosting, and everyone for taking some time out today to learn more about redistricting. So the site that I am at right now, and I thought this was all set up, is cocoredistricting.org. This is our dedicated website. Stop it from moving. And I'm just going to go through a couple key highlights that I want to show you, and then we'll get into the mapping program. Along the top, we have our menu items, and most of these are different ways to provide some input. And as you see, everything is provided in Spanish and Chinese, as well as in English. The next big event is highlighted front and center. You're here at the next big event on Wednesday. Today,
Christine, you're not showing up on the screen yet. So.
Oh, wow. It says I'm sharing. Well, I'll just stay here because my screen was acting strange anyway. Can you let me know when you can see? I'm getting a text that Chris can see, and he's on Zoom. So maybe it's just, can you see in the chambers?
Okay.
Yeah. So in the chambers here, we can't see you, so we're going to rejoin. So Christine, you're fine over there.
Okay. I'll just keep going since I think there's a number of people who are on Zoom who can probably see.
Just to make sure the public, Christine is visible on the Zoom version, right? But not on the here in the council chambers, because I see it on the Zoom version. Okay. So that means for those that are here, they won't be able, however, to see your presentation, only the folks on Zoom.
I will do my best to describe for those that are in the room what you're looking at to the best of my ability. Pardon? I heard Supervisor Joya talking, but then it went silent. Okay, I'm just going to keep going. So we have our workshops front and center, which is where we're at right now. And right below that, we have the 5 maps that we released for the last public hearing. We've also provided those in District R, which I will show you a little bit later. As you go down, public input opportunities with a calendar of events and the next event highlighted, which is where we are right now. And at the bottom of every page is this footer that includes one of many places where you can click to draw and submit a map and a couple other map options that will take you to our redistricting portal. This is the Contra Costa County Public Comment Portal. It is hosted by District R, and which is run out of Tufts University in their math lab. It was created specifically to make sure that people had a way to make your voices heard in the redistricting process. It provides for written testimony, districting plans, and communities of interest. There's a description about how to draw a map, which are provided in videos, although we'll take you through these tutorial. I'll give you a tutorial right after I give you a tour of the site. And finally, there's you can submit your comments. There's a couple things I would like to highlight. Every comment should have a title so that we can refer to it. If it's a written testimony, describe what you would like the Board of Supervisors to know. And then there's districting plans and communities of interest. One of the features that this has is tags, so they're like hashtags. You can hashtags, and one of the examples I like is if you're with a community organization, you do like League of Women Voters, and then League of Women Voters members, or League of Women Voters, I can spell that correctly. Anyone could search for that and find all the plans that other league members may have submitted. When you fill out, tell us about yourself, there's a couple things that we need. We need at least a first name or identifier, and an email address. And this email address is important so that once you submit your plan, you'll receive an email to confirm your email address. And this is to ensure that the district R server doesn't get over spammed, anything like that. And there's a couple of disclaimers that you understand that any submissions will be publicly posted. We're required by law to do so. But we, however, will not publish your email address or your phone number. And if you authorize us to contact you if we happen to have any questions. And then here we have all of our, this is our submission gallery. This is all the plans that have been submitted. There's actually 2 pages of them. And the county has provided our draft concepts as submissions, and I will show you how that can be helpful to you later. So we're going to go up to this map communities of interest. And that will pull up something that looks a lot like a Google map and will allow you to submit your community of interest. I'm going to start by searching for the North Richmond community. That's an area I know is in Supervisor Joya's area and might be a community of interest. We're going to paint. So up on the top, there is some tools. There's a hand that allows you to move around. There's a paintbrush, and this paintbrush has a couple options. You can make it very large and get a large portion of a community, or if you want to do a little bit more detailed work, you can make it smaller, and then it just selects a few blocks at a time. And these are selecting census blocks, which is what we're required to use in redistricting. That's not the whole community, but that's a large portion of it. You would then name your community and then describe and why this is important. We have some data layers that can be helpful as you draw your communities. This is a census designated place. You can see that North Richmond is a census designated place, and now I can see that I went a little bit over the unincorporated area, so I want to make sure that I can select this eraser, and I can erase the areas that are outside of the unincorporated area, although still part of North. I could also, at an important spot, I think that's the senior center. And I could describe why this is important as a community gathering place. So this is just an example. Once I have my example, I can see how this particular community compares to the county in terms of race and ethnicity, as well as in voting age population, race and ethnicity. If I like what I see and I'm good with my community of interest, I can hit save in the upper right-hand corner. And once I save, there are 2 options. The first option is to simply copy this to my clipboard. Let's say I notice that there's something that needs to be done differently, or maybe I have a child who needs some attention and I'm not quite ready. I can copy this and save it in a Word document or an email, or I could email it to a friend or something, and that will allow you to come back and continue to work on your map. However, if I'm ready to submit to the county, I can proceed to submit map. We'll take you right back to that submission form, and we'll auto-populate the map URL. You're now in community of interest, so you can just provide a title and why it's important. information about yourself and submit. Once you authorize your email, it will show up in the submission gallery. Next, we'll look at how to draw districts. This is the supervisorial districts, and it's a very similar process with a couple key differences. First, you see that there are 5 colors. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I want to start in the first district, I can again choose my brush size, and I can just start drawing Supervisor Joya's district. This line right here is the ideal 233,613.8. Not sure how we count this 0.8, but it will tell you if you're close. And if I'm feeling close, I might lock that district. And this is a nice feature, so that if I go into District 2, you can see that it doesn't paint over what I've already selected. And I can start to just paint down into the San Ramon Valley, back up, and then I'm getting pretty close. So I'm going to lock that one, and I can just continue throughout. This obviously is not a real plan. This is just me showing you 4 and 5, or 5. It's not as many people. One of the features that is really helpful is there is this highlight unassigned units. And you can highlight that and it turns bright red. So you can see that even if you think you get everything, you might be missing a block or 2. So that's a useful tool. Again, there are data layers that are available to help you out. You can show the numbering system, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can show census designated places or cities or the current districts to help you draw your own lines. And again, the population and demographic information as well as coalitions, so you can bring 2 or more populations together. Let's say you want to do Hispanic and Black together. And we'll show you that. And once again, you can evaluate population by race and the voting age population by race, and you can compare a couple different selections. You save exactly the same way. You can either come back and fix it later or send it to a friend or talk about it with someone, or you can proceed to submit a map. There's one final feature that I want to highlight, and that's, I think, maybe my favorite feature. I'm going to select one of the county's maps. This provides a summary of the map. And if more information about the map, I can go straight here and proceed to submit a comment. That will take me and it'll fill in that number that's related to the map that I want to submit my comment on. And I can say, this is a great map, or I like this except for this one thing. If you want to use an existing map as a template, you can view that map in District R, and it will load the map. This is concept 2 that we've created, and then you might want to change, I'm going to change, this is 5, and I think it needs to be a little bigger. I'm just going to make it go down this way a little bit more. And then I can save it and I can submit it as my own map and say what I've changed. So I think that's a really interesting feature that allows you to submit your own maps and provide comments on the maps that have been submitted by the county. And again, you can start all of that by going to our dedicated website at cocoredistricting.com or .org, I'm sorry. And now I'm going to pass it on to Chris, and hopefully you can see his screen because he has some interesting maps to share.
Thank you, Christine. Good evening, folks. Supervisor Joya, I'm glad to be here for another one of these workshops. I'm going to share my screen here. Please let me know if you can see this. Looks like you can. All right. So this is the overview map and data page, and each one of the map concepts I will show you will have a larger map with lots of details so you can see specific communities, and then an overview page with lots of data so that you can see all the charts and stuff. This is the current districts here that have current total population variance of 7.91%. And we might have covered this already, but I'm going to go over it one more time. That's basically adding the highest variance, which in the current districts is District 2 at 4.35%, with the lowest variance, which in this case is District 1, negative 3.56%. Add those two numbers together, and it's 7.91 is the total variance, and we want that number to be under 10%. Also, there's the race and ethnicity broken down by total population, as well as the citizen voting age population. If you've been following these data tables closely, you may notice there was a slight revision that we made. The statewide data center, which, as David explained, kind of reallocated some population. They revised their data. They put out a new database, and our total population, our total county population for redistricting purposes went up by 5 people. Though there were slightly more changes in the demographic breakdown, it seems like a lot of what they did was put groups that had been in the other category into some of the more specific categories in a general way, although it's hard to see exactly what they did. Anyway, none of the percentages changed in here. These are all pretty much the same general. The numbers often changed by 1 or 2 for any given block. But just a note for everyone to have. So I'm going to move on from this to the first concept map. This is the first concept map that we've drawn for the new supervisorial districts. And in this concept, we're going to start in District 1. Pretty much in every map, I'm going to start in District 1, and I'm going to move around in a counterclockwise fashion, kind of following the district numbers. And we'll explain the changes since the current districts. Now, you can see the current districts are on this map in light yellow here. In some places, they're a little bit easier to see than others, but they're in here. And I'll walk you through and explain what's changed. So in District 1, the big change here is the Pinole. Pinole in 2011 was split into 2 districts, with the kind of northwest portion of Pinole being in District 5 and the southeast portion being in District 1. Well, in this concept map, the entire city limits of Pinole are in District 1, and the entire city limits of Hercules are in District 5. As we circle around the map, we're going to go to a community here, an unincorporated community called Release Valley, which is tucked in between Martinez and Lafayette, Pleasant Hill, and Walnut Creek. It's got a lot of communities of interest that overlap. It's got 3 different city spheres of influence, and it's got 3 different school districts, but they're not in the same places. In this map concept, and all the map concepts you'll see tonight, we've divided Release Valley, which is currently entirely in District 5. We've divided it by school district. So the portion of Release Valley that's in the Martinez School District will go with Martinez in District 5, or stay in District 5. The portion that's in the Lafayette School District will go into District 2, and the portion that's in the Mount Diablo School District will go with Pleasant Hill and Walnut Creek into District 4. The next place I'll highlight is the city of Walnut Creek. In this map concept, the entire incorporated city of Walnut Creek will go to District 4. But as you might see here, there's lots of unincorporated pockets of Walnut Creek, including Acalanes Ridge, Saranac, Castle Hill. These ones were previously in District 2. Well, in this map concept, Acalanes Ridge and Castle Hill will go into District 4, but Saranac will be split. And the reason it's split is because Saranac is actually split by the city SOIs of Lafayette and Walnut Creek. And the folks in the Lafayette side and the folks in the Walnut Creek side have lots going on with their cities. So in this concept, this is split at the city SOI. As we circle around to the southeast here, in San Ramon Valley, there's several unincorporated communities: Diablo, Blackhawk, Camino Tasajara, as well as the rural area of Tasajara Valley. This entire area over here is in District 3 currently, but is very much considers itself a community of interest with Danville and San Ramon. We've heard lots of comments from the folks there about that. So in this concept, the entire San Ramon Valley will go into District 2. One thing you might notice here up around Mount Diablo State Park is the previous districts here in yellow are now in a different spot. And you might ask, why did we bother to change those lines? Well, as Christine was showing in District R, we've got to go into every little census block and use those blocks to draw our maps. And in this case, the lines we used last time, 10 years ago, they may no longer exist in the census geography. They're not census blocks. They moved them for whatever reason. So out here, the reorganization of these lines is just based on where we could get clean census blocks to draw the lines with. But this area is all in the Mount Diablo State Park. There's really not a lot of people that live in there. As we continue to move out here to the east, you see the community of Morgan Territory, and the rest of East County stay in District 3. We're going to circle around to the city of Antioch. Now, about 2 years ago, this little pocket here is called Tuscany Meadows. It was annexed into the city of Pittsburgh. So that one we're going to advise go into District 5 with the rest of the city of Pittsburgh. And Antioch was previously split by the 2011 district boundaries. It was split by Highway 4 here, Cavallo Road, and then East 18th Street. Sorry about that, guys. In this case, we're going to change the split. And in this map concept, the split goes down here, the Union Pacific Railroad line here. We're going to have the split there. It's a nice clean split. And then in Concord, now in 2011, Concord was entirely inside District 4. In this map concept, we've got Concord being split here, and it's being split by Willow Pass Road, Concord Ave, and a little bit of Interstate 680 here by the airport. This one puts the airport in District 5, Buchanan Field Airport, and then parts of the former Concord Naval Weapons Station, which actually goes all the way down here almost to Clayton. This entire kind of border of Concord is the former Concord Naval Weapons Station, but just this portion up here north of Willow Pass goes into District 5. Again, sorry guys. Again, here's the data page that has all the breakdowns on it, and you'll see from this chart that in this concept, District 2 has the high variance of 4.90%. District 4 rather has the high variance of 4.90%, and District 3 has the low at negative 2.55% for a total variance of 7.45%. Moving on to concept map 2, in District 1, we're going to start in Pinole again, and you're going to notice the theme here because we do it in all the map concepts you'll see tonight. Pinole is going to be made whole and go into District 1. As we circle around, Release Valley is going to be split up by the school districts, just like in the first concept map. Now, once we get to Walnut Creek, things are going to change a little bit from the last map. This time, we've got the city of Walnut Creek still split between District 2 and District 4, but in a different spot. Here, we're going to have the district split at Highway 24 and Interstate 680, with the communities of Saranac and Castle Hill being entirely in District 2, and the community of Acalanes Ridge entirely in District 4. As we continue to the south, the San Ramon Valley will, Diablo, Blackhawk, Camino Tasajara Valley will all go into District 2 with Danville and San Ramon. Now up here, we've got the area of Morgan Territory, which is comprised of Morgan Territory Road here and Marsh Creek Road here. And the boundaries that we're using to demarcate this are the school district boundaries from Mount Diablo School District. So these folks all are in the school district with Clayton and Concord, and consider themselves a community of interest with Clayton. So this area in this concept is brought into District 4. The rest of East County stays at District 3 until you get around to Antioch. And in this time, there's quite a step ladder type split here of Antioch, following several roads and railroads, which you could follow along. This also includes a little pocket of unincorporated county right here, right next to the 160 bridge. As you circle around to Concord, there's a little bit smaller split of Concord in this map. It follows Willow Pass Road again, but When it gets to this little neighborhood, it skirts to the north and follows the Concord Naval Weapons Station boundary and leaves this neighborhood with its neighbors across Willow Pass inside District 4. Then as it follows Willow Pass Road towards downtown, it follows East Street, Grant Street, and Solano Way up to Marsh Drive by the Highway 4. And that is how it splits Concord in this map. Now, this concept has a high in District 2 of 4.82% and a low in District 5 of negative 2.84% for a total variance of 7.66%. Moving on to concept map 3. I'll start again in Pinole, and it goes to District 1. In District 2 here, Release Valley will go by school districts. Walnut Creek is split by Highway 24, Interstate 680. Diablo, Blackhawk, Camino Tasahara, and the Tasahara Valley go into District 2. The Morgan Territory Road area goes into District 4. In Antioch, there's really a very minor change from the current 2011 districts. It just follows a few less roads with a slightly more of Antioch going into District 3 here. And as you circle around to Concord, it follows Willow Pass Road and skirts around this neighborhood. Then it goes up Olivera Road until it hits Highway 242. Then the split follows 242 down here towards downtown, but it doesn't make it into downtown and follows this old railroad right-of-way up here that kind of separates the airport and some of the commercial areas there from the neighborhoods over here. You can see it on an aerial photo. There's a bunch of public storage that goes along this line here. It's pretty easy to see on a photo. And for District 3, again, District 2 is the high variance with 4.82%, and District 3 is the low with negative 4% for a total variance of 8.82%. Next is concept map 4. In Pinole goes into District 1. In Release Valley, it is split by school district. Walnut Creek is split by 24 and 680. San Ramon Valley goes into District 2. In this concept map, Morgan Territory Road area stays in District 3, and the split up on Mont Diablo is just based on the new census geography. In Antioch, the split follows Cavallo Road and Fulton Shipyard Road to give kind of a different look here on the northern waterfront. And then in in Concord, the split of the district follows Highway 4, Port Chicago Highway into downtown, and it kind of cuts through the north end of downtown on Bonifacio Street and then goes up the railroad right of way. This concept map has a high of 4.81% in District 2 and a low of negative 4.11% in District 5 for a total variance of 8.92%. Our final concept map start in Pinole to District 1, Release Valley by school district, Walnut Creek by Highway 24 and Interstate 680, San Ramon Valley to District 2, Morgan Territory Road stays in District 3. Antioch. In Antioch, the split is a little bit wider over here by Tuscany Meadows. It follows Summersville Road, basically from the end of Summersville Road till it hits the railroad. Then it follows the railroad clean over to Highway 160, which is also the city limit in this spot. In Concord, the split follows Highway 4, then Highway 242, then the railroad right-of-way. This is the smallest split in Concord, with the smallest amount going to District 5. This one has a higher variance of 9.68%. This is our highest variance on these concept maps. The high of 4.81 in District 2 and the low of negative 4.87 in District 5 make up our last concept map.
Thank you, Chris. At this time, I'll turn it back to Supervisor Joya so we can get into questions.
Well, I think at this point, we will open it up to any public comment. And what we'll do is start with whoever's here in the audience, if they wish to provide public comment, and then go to those who are on Zoom or phone. So why don't we start with that? If anyone here in the chambers wants to provide public comment on anything related to redistricting. Yes. So I think what I'm told is to come up to the mic that way and just identify yourself, and that way it will be heard by those who are also watching.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Vanessa Warhite. I'm a resident of Costa. This is fun. I am curious how this redistricting process for the county does or doesn't affect the various other political redistricting that's happening for congressional.
Right. Sure. That's a really good question. Okay, thanks, Vanessa. So I'll say something, and David Twa can say something as well. So we are only responsible under state law to draw the boundaries for our for Board of Supervisors. It does not affect any other jurisdiction. I know that now there are other agencies in the county who could, for example, the Contra Costa County Board of Education. They draw their own boundaries. There are also five members. You know, they may look at this in some way, and I see that one of their board members is actually watching this, so that's a good thing. But they may consider it or not in how they draw their boundaries of 5 districts. You may have heard that the Citizens Redistricting Commission, which was set up by a proposition in California, has recently released some draft maps for congressional and state legislative districts, which propose a number of changes that actually are pretty significant. But our process does not impact their process at all. David, did you want to say anything about that? So just to be clear, generally, many agencies get to draw their own boundaries, like the local agencies, like cities, for example, special districts, the county, but the federal and state legislative districts are drawn by a statewide Citizens Redistricting Commission that's appointed under state law.
Sure. That's an excellent explanation, but just a couple of additional factors. Not everybody draws their district lines at the same time.
Right.
So, for example, under the state offices, the legislature, they have until December 27th to actually do the drafting, as opposed to us, who has to have ours done by December 15th. And the cities do not have to have their district lines drawn until sometime in April of 2022. It's because the statutory provisions require that you count back from when a primary date is, and that the cities typically have their primaries in the fall, whereas the county has a primary in June. And so therefore, we're subject to the December 15th date.
Yeah.
So where would I find the Citizens Redistricting?
Good question.
Supervisor, that information is also on our dedicated redistricting website. We have, as a part of there, you can click on that and it will give you the information as to how to get to the state citizen drafting commission as well as other jurisdictions.
So now we'll move to any questions from those who are participating remotely, and I'll turn it over to the county staff to monitor that process.
Supervisor, since we have our Spanish interpreter here, we could ask that she would also give the information. So.
Thank you, David.
Okay, so if you are dialed in through the phone line and would like to make a comment, please press #2. Or if you are joined in via Zoom and would like to make a comment, please click on the raise hand icon located at the bottom of your screen, and you do have 3 minutes to state your comment.
Si usted quiere hacer una llamada telefónica, por favor, presione el numeral y el 2. Si de lo contrario quiere hacer una intervención a través de Zoom, por favor, presione la manita que se levanta en el fondo de la imagen a mano derecha.
In fact, is there simultaneous translation going on my answer to Vanessa's question, that those who are zooming in can hear if they need Spanish? I thought we were making that available. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I recognize like all but one or two names on here, and I don't recognize anybody that needs Spanish translation on here, but I don't want to, vouch for that. And I thought we were going to make things available, or you're waiting if people requested it ahead of time. So what was the process on that? So should we ask the interpreter to say if anybody out there listening in needs Spanish translation? Why don't we do that? Because then that way we will know.
Por favor, indiquen si necesitan interpretación en español, porque tenemos interpretación consecutiva en este momento.
While we're waiting, I will make a comment just because this is in West County, although there are obviously changes all over. I did look at the Citizens Redistricting Map, and it proposes some major changes. For example, the congressional district, for most of us here in West County, is currently within Congressman Mark DeSaulniers' district, and the proposed map moves most of West County from the county line in El Cerrito and Kensington up to Hercules into the Oakland, Berkeley, Emeryville, Albany congressional district, which I think is currently represented by Congressmember Barbara Lee. So that's a major change I saw here. I didn't look at the state maps. Okay, so I will turn it over to whoever's monitoring this to look at anyone who wishes to participate. And I see most of the names on here, at least as attendees on Zoom, pretty much almost all, but a couple are West County residents. So it's good to see that we're getting West County residents tuning into this.
So at this time, I don't see no phone callers, no Zoom participants.
We'll ask again. I know I see some very active, great active folks who are monitoring it, and I'm sure they're good at also getting information out to their networks about this process. But so are we confirming that nobody wants to ask a question? You want to ask that again in Spanish one more time?
Si hay alguien que desea hacer comentarios en español, por favor, bien pueden hacerlo, ya sea llamando por teléfono con el numeral 2 o a través de Zoom, levantan la mano en el icono de Zoom. Tienen 3 minutos para hacer su comentario. Tenemos interpretación consecutiva al inglés.
Okay, David, turn it back over to you for other comments about next steps and process.
Thank you, Supervisor. As I indicated earlier, we'll have one additional community workshop tomorrow night. That one will be by Zoom or call-in, and that one will start at 7 p.m. So we would invite you to participate in that one if you would like. Then we have 2 public hearings coming up. The first one will be on November 9th, and that will be at 9 a.m. in the county boardroom. And again, people will have the opportunity to participate by Zoom or by call-in. And then hopefully we will have some proposed final map for the board to consider at their November 23rd public hearing. And again, that one will be starting at 9 a.m. in the county boardroom and available by Zoom and by call-in. All of this, as I indicated earlier, is necessary in order for us to have all of the redistricting done by the deadline, which is December 15th of this year. So we invite everybody to participate. We would certainly enjoy if you would go to our dedicated mapping site and either draw your own maps or, if nothing else, take a look at the various maps that are there and comment on them. We are trying to get as much public input as possible. So thank you.
Well, David, your discussion prompted Rita Baruch to raise her hand. So Rita, so someone should take over and elevate her so she can ask her question.
Yeah, Rita, so you should have received a prompt and she did accept. So Rita, whenever you're ready, if you can unmute and make your comment, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, sorry, I'm on my mobile phone. Simply a question. Will this workshop be available to view on a website or on John Joya's Facebook?
All of the community meetings that we have held, plus the public hearings, are available on our dedicated website, or will be. So this one will be posted. I don't know how quickly it gets posted. Usually within a day or two at the very latest. And as I indicated earlier, one of the other things that's there is all of the technical workshops that we handled back in September and in October are also there. And so those are ideas in terms of how to help you in terms of should you decide you wish to draw a community of interest or a district map.
Rita, we can make sure that we link to it on my website as well, and we could link to that on Facebook as well, because I know people may be interested in this particular workshop, since while much of the workshop's the same as other parts of the county, there were some comments more unique to West County. So David, we can get the link and we'll link it on our website, Rita. So thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. We've been in a SEIU 1021 COPE meeting at the same time, so it was hard to do both.
Thanks for your service. Also, your many years of social service in Contra Costa County for many years, Rita.
Thank you.
So I was going to just clarify on that. All of these are available on the website, so people could choose to look at the date of the workshop that they want to look at, correct? All right, so this one, when will this one be available and linked on the website? Okay. Like all those folks who were on the COPE meeting tonight, SEIU, who may want to watch it, so and others. So we'll make sure and we'll link to it on our website. So we will do that. Any other comments?
So at this time, I do not see any more public comments.
Okay, and if people have follow-up questions, where do you recommend that they email those questions? On the website itself?
Supervisor, they can send them to the clerk of the board's office, or they can actually go onto the website and leave a comment. And we do review those and respond to them.
Right. And just to note, since we are in West County, I think what we saw on all of the at least maps that have been presented so far, and there can be others, the only real difference was District 1 taking on all of Pinole. It currently includes about half of Pinole. It would take on all of Pinole, so it keeps Pinole as a community of interest together. And if it were to go further east into Hercules, it would sort of upset the balance numbers for District 1. And I think no one wants to get in a position of trying to split Hercules if they don't need to. So that's the only change on the District 1 map. And then of course the staff went through what the changes were off the other districts. Of course, you're all welcome to get on the website and draw your own maps or your own community of interest, and to submit them through the website for us to consider and to look at. So want to thank everybody for their participation in this. And if you have any questions, you can email my office generally if we can help you get an answer on process, or you can email directly on the redistricting website. Great. Thank you. All right, I'm supposed to say I'm adjourned. Okay. All right, I'm told I'm supposed to say we are adjourned.